really tight.
I'm just thinking,
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it.
thing is strong.
Just try and make it.
That has been anything in a long time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the September 3rd regular meeting of the Hyde Park Planning Board. Please take note of all the exits around the room in case of emergency, and now join me as we reaffirm our loyalty to the Stars and Stripes.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A quick note, welcome back, Mr. Rodenhausen. It's been a while since we've seen you, occupying the attorney's chair over there.
Thank you.
The first item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for Dollar General. Applicants are seeking site plan approval to erect a new store at 1049 Ballard Avenue. May I get a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
As a reminder, we've been working on this application for a while now. We've had lots of back and forth dialogue with Mr. Hemula, who's representing the applicant. They've made lots of progress in terms of the aesthetics of the building and also in terms of the site. At our last meeting, we were able to conclude seeker because Mr. Cire, our engineer, had contacted the Department of Health and they got conceptual approval for the sewer system that they're trying to put in. So we're here tonight probably to consider final approval or consider approval. But first, Mr. Hemula, do you have anything to add?
I was able to see the conditions for the resolution, and I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions. I talked to the engineer just briefly before the meeting, but I understand that one of the conditions is the approval of the final lighting plan, the photometrics plan, and we did have one in the packet. So I think something along those lines. It looks like that's meeting the requirements, but it needs to just make its
All of us.
final approval.
Somehow, Mr. Sotero and our planning consultant did not receive, since it was sent digitally at first by you. And I guess I didn't forward it on to them. I forwarded it on to all the board.
Things that were going back and forth.
Right. So somehow it slipped through. So you've already submitted it. It just needs to be added to the set of plans.
I see.
And Mr. Sotero will review it. But
Okay.
I personally, as you know, was very interested in it, and you lowered it way down. So I don't think you'll have any issues.
The other item, as it relates to the lighting plan, I noticed there was a note on there about the double heads along the northern property line where the parking spaces are. There was a concern with the spillage over the property line. My recollection of the lighting plan was that there was very limited spillage. I know that we only have about maybe 20-foot setback with the property line, and that there is a comment in there about changing it to a single-headed fixture versus a double-headed fixture. The fixtures that we were specifying, I think, are very similar. They are cutoff fixtures to the light fixtures that are in the CVS Center down the street, except those globes hang below the light. These would be kind of up within. The only thing that I'm pointing out is that if we end up removing a head from that double-headed fixture, it will likely require additional poles to achieve the light levels on the parking surface that are similar to what you're seeing now. And I just wanted to make a reference to that because if you take away the head, the light level goes away on those parking spaces, and we'll need to still try to add another head or two, or a pole or two in there. I would like to see it remain as is if possible, so that we don't have to do that, but
I'm looking at the
I'll defer
photometric.
to some comments.
I'm looking at the photometric plan because I would like to see more poles. Along the northern side, the brightest area that I see is 0.4.
They've been changed already, I believe, I mean, when I saw the last, when I saw one of the plans that was floating around in email, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that the most current plan that we have only shows the single-headed fixtures in that, area, and that, the light levels are reduced because of it. So, I mean, we have to double check. That's why I wanted to keep it in there, because there's been so many plans that have been kind of flying back and forth through email land.
Todd, do you remember which page of the most recent plan? Because we got short sets. Do you remember which one your lighting is on by chance? I think it's sheet 4 of 9.
Sheet 4, yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's showing the double beta pendants right now.
Yes.
It's easier for you to see on a large.
Well, that's on the other detail sheet. I think on the plan view, again, I could be wrong, but I thought that on the latest plan view, that it did show a single-headed, fixture with different light levels. I mean, it makes no sense to put, honestly, Todd, it makes no sense to put a double-headed fixture when you have a single loaded parking. I mean, if
Quite
you had,
sure the drawings I saw this afternoon in an email, there were 3 double-headed ones there.
all right, well,
And-
maybe it didn't get
But I mean,
changed.
I don't know what the latest level is either now.
Well,
We're
that-
somewhat confused
that's
on
my
that.
recollection, and that's the photometric plan that was advanced. Maybe where I'm going with this is just allow a little bit of flexibility with the engineer's approval of the photometric plan, so that if the double heads which are there meet the lighting requirements and intent of the town, that be allowed and permitted, instead of just putting in the single head, so that we would then end up having to add like another pole or 2 along that parking line. But I believe they are double-headed on that.
Yeah, all right, well, we'll work it out.
Okay. And then the last item is that I was asking the town engineer, but one of the easement agreements will have to come from the attorney, from the town attorney?
The stormwater maintenance agreement.
Stormwater maintenance
right.
agreement for the benefit of the town. And I would just ask that be advanced as soon as possible, so I could get a legal review from Dollar General.
We have some samples, George, that we've used before.
Okay.
Right, you have forms you can send to him, Mr. Rodenhausen? Yes. Great. Anything else, Mr. Hemula?
That is it, thank you.
Any other comments from the consultants, Mr. Sotero?
No, I don't think so. All the things that we were concerned about have been incorporated into the conditional approval, so.
And I apologize about somehow not, I do believe I just must have not sent you the lighting plan when it was sent to me.
It's all right. There was just a lot of stuff that was going back and forth.
Mr. Rodenhausen, any comments?
Say on that number, item, the condition number 3, which we were just talking about, the double-headed light fixtures, it is now written as a mandatory requirement. If the board is inclined, when it considers this, it might just add at the end of that, if recommended by the consulting engineer for the town, so that it's flexible and they can resolve this as part of their discussion on the photometric plan.
Thank you, I've made the changes on my copy.
Yeah.
That's all.
Could I have that again, and which one we're changing?
Beyond the property, condition 3, beyond the property line, instead of a period, it would end with comma, and then if recommended by the consulting engineer to the planning board.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me start to my right. Mr. Masigliani, any additional comments?
No comments.
Mr. Oliver?
No comment, other than I'm glad to see that this is, you got all the issues figured out with the drainage and the septic there, and hopefully it'll be a great addition to Hyde Park, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dexter?
I would second that, and I do know that you still do need to work closely with the Department of Health, so I hope everything comes out well for you. Thank you for your cooperation.
Mr. Groninger?
I also second the earlier comments, because this is going to allow us a lot of flexibility on some other projects. So I hope your membrane project works out.
Yes, it's true. This will, once this is passed, this will actually help us with maybe some other projects that face similarly difficult conditions for build out. Mr. Murphy?
Just same everything, and thanks for the cooperation.
Good.
Showed us.
Mr. Signa?
Yeah, I just echo what my colleagues have said, and I'm aware of other businesses along 9G that are looking at Dollar General coming in as an incentive for them to fix up what they currently have, so.
I think it's never a point that shouldn't be made more often, that the locations that have recently gone through some aesthetic improvements to their exteriors, including Rockledge Plaza, they tend to create an energy that causes more improvements as well. And I think this will also set a nice tone for the area. Would there be anyone from the public who'd like to speak about this application? There being none, may I get a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Mr. Signa, you have this resolution?
I do. Resolution granting site plan approval, Dollar General, September 3rd, 2014. Resolution 14-7B. Whereas, 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 got them all. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the planning board hereby approves the site plan set subject to the following conditions. 1, payment of all fees in escrow. 2, approval of a final photometric plan by the town's consulting engineer and inclusion of same in the final site plan set. 3, revision of S4 to change the double-headed light fixtures along the northern parking spaces to single-headed cutoff fixtures to prevent light spillover beyond the property line recommended by consulting engineer to the planning board.
Was it if recommended,
If recommended.
Yeah.
correct? Sorry.
So, restating, 3, revision of S4 to change the double-headed light fixtures along the northern parking spaces to single-headed cutoff fixtures to prevent light spillover beyond the property line, if recommended by consulting engineer to the planning board. 4, revision of S9 to correct the New York State Department of Transportation entrance detail to include the correct radius and curbs as recommended by the town's consulting engineer. 5, submission by the applicant to the planning board and the town's consulting engineer of specifications for the PVC membrane liner and seam testing and manufacturer certifications, all of which shall be added to the site plan following approval by the town's consulting engineer. 6, approval by the planning board attorney of a stormwater drainage easement on property of Lawson. 7, approval by the planning board attorney of a stormwater maintenance easement and agreement in favor of the town of Hyde Park, including the town's right to inspect applicant's maintenance of all of the project's stormwater facilities. 8, approval of either A, a stormwater pollution prevention plan by the town's consulting engineer, or B, a local erosion and sedimentation control permit by the zoning administrator as appropriate. 9, approval by the Dutchess County Department of Health of methods of wastewater disposal. 10, approval by Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority of the water connection. 11, approval by the town's consulting engineer of the applicant's responses to comments 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 in the July 14, 2014 letter from Morris Associates. 12, revision of the site plan to include roof leader drain pipes extending into the underpavement detention system, subject to approval of the town's consulting engineer. Be it further resolved that before a certificate of occupancy may be issued for the site, the applicant must provide the zoning administrator with the following documents. 1, proof of recordation of the stormwater easement on the Lawson property in the Dutchess County Clerk's Office, and 2, proof of recordation of the stormwater maintenance easement to the benefit of the town of Hyde Park in the Dutchess County Clerk's Office. So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. We look forward to seeing construction start as soon as you can.
Thank you.
I know you do too. As I said to Mr. Lawson, the property owner, I believe that you'll be going through a little bit more to meet the conditions, mostly with Department of Health. But I'll look forward to signing the site plan as soon as all conditions are met. Okay?
Yeah, thank you very much.
And in the interim, if there's any time that you need my assistance, just email me. If you're having a hard time getting through to somebody, just let me know.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a series of new public hearings. I'm going to ask for a motion to open all 4 at one time.
So moved.
Is all in favor?
Aye.
A couple of notes before we begin. One, we cannot open and close the public hearing tonight, no matter what. We had some misdirection, I'll call it, with the application, and I missed our agenda meeting, so when we advertised this, we made 2 errors. One, it was not advertised in time in the Poughkeepsie Journal, which it requires 5 days' notice, so we'll be doing that for the next one. But we did send out notices to all the neighboring property owners at each site. However, even then we made an error, because at Ralph R. Smith there are 2 signs. We show a directional only. Also at North Park Elementary, I thought that the directional sign was all that we would be reviewing. Ms. Moss opined that what I'll call the internal sign, meaning the sign that's set back actually on school property, is also visible from 9G, so therefore it's subject to the code. That noted, who's representing the applicants tonight? Is Nancy here? Yeah, there you are. is no one representing the applicants tonight. The reason why I ask is just in advance, the signs we'll be considering are signs at Ralph R. Smith Elementary, North Park Elementary, Hyde Park Elementary, I believe, because that was part of our package that was submitted, but there were no dimensions submitted, so. So we'll be dropping that one. And then we have the Hyde Park Central School District Administrative Building at 11 Boyce Road. In advance, this is not something that the audience has seen, but I spent some time today with Ms. Moss, our zoning administrator, and made what I'll call a cheat sheet for all the signs. If all the planning board members have received this in advance, you'll notice that I put in action needed. So I'm just going to summarize this in essence by saying all the signs that we'll be looking at tonight, the only way they don't comport with the code is basically in dimension. That's all. There's just some dimensional changes. The reason why I say this, I'm going to go back now and go a little bit longer. Ms. Moss treated all the proposed signs under section 108-24.5 exempt signs. Specifically 108-24.5A8, signs erected and maintained by any governmental agency for the protection of the health, safety, or general welfare of the public are exempt. However, in order to qualify as exempt from our code, they also must, quote, comply with the general regulations in 108-24.2. Under 108-24.2C3, signs customarily incidental to not-for-profit organizations, governments are not-for-profit in her opinion, shall be no more than 2 in number and shall not exceed 30 square feet per sign face. Most of the signs here exceed 30 square feet. So what we'd be looking at tonight is whether there's legitimate and compelling interest upon the part of the school to exceed the dimensions of 30 square feet. Mr. Rodenhausen, is that a good enough way for me to summarize the beginning?
Very good.
Thank you.
I couldn't improve on it.
Thank you, I doubt that. So the first question, I take it, is are the signs legitimately subject to our code? Correct?
I beg your pardon, I was just asking for a copy of her cheat sheet.
The first question that we raise would be, are they legitimately under review by our town code?
Correct. And if I could just explain that Monroe balancing test
Please.
quickly. The school district is, in essence, a governmental entity which is established under the education law and has certain privileges as a governmental entity. And so the question of whether or not anything it does is subject to local zoning is a question needs to be asked and answered. And before 1988, school districts generally were considered to be immune from local law. But in 1988, the Court of Appeals in New York State issued a decision which basically threw out all the law prior to 1988 and established what's called a balancing test. And because the case was County of Monroe against the City of Rochester, it's called the Monroe balancing test, in which the respective public interest of the two governmental entities have to be reviewed to see which one should be given priority in terms of application of law. And so the court laid out 9 elements to consider. And what I recommend to the board here is that you review those 9 elements first on the question of whether or not signage in general, it's a general question of whether the signs that are proposed by any school district are subject to local regulation. And you can go through those elements to make that determination. And then secondly, looking at each individual sign, whether there's anything in the way the sign is perhaps not complying with local zoning that needs to be resolved in terms of whether or not the local regulation should be applied in that particular case. And as the chair just said, all these are dimensional questions. So whether the letter height, for example, or the sign dimension is an issue which is of significance and importance to the town, to override, such significance as to override the interest of the school district would be the question to ask and answer. So I recommend you do it in 2 steps. One is to look at the question of whether signage in general is of importance to the town and should be regulated, and secondly, whether each individual sign and each individual regulation as it applies to that sign should be enforced.
To follow up on that, I want to make note that, again, the only way that these signs are not code compliant is just the area square footage per sign face. The letter heights are all, everything comports. And I don't want to lead the board, but just in looking at the 9 criteria or factors, one of the things I think we should consider throughout is that the signs were basically designed to be code compliant. Further, we don't have pictures of the signs right now, but the way Ms. Moss and our code requires the sign face square footage area to be calculated means that it's the entire sign face within the geometric shape. However, Ms. Moss and I, when we worked today, if you look, there's an architectural pediment, would be called, a triangle at the top of each sign. If you exclude that area out, which she can't legally, but if you exclude that out, every sign would actually be code compliant with the exception of one. So the fact that the applicants have made a good faith effort to follow our code as much as possible and only need dimensional increases, I think to me it's a compelling reason why we should consider approving these. I would also add that while there's a little bit of a difference, like for North Park, the freestanding internal sign is 40 square feet. Again, 8 square feet of it is blank space in an architectural pediment that's shown for just decorative elements. And I think that we all had a presentation by the school board, or school district, excuse me, before on the signs, and I believe that all 7 of us thought they were attractive and looked nice. So I don't think we should somehow penalize, in other words, the school district for putting up signs that to us actually reflect well our historic and scenic qualities for the community. As to whether or not the signs should be subject to our local code, I guess I looked at it in the way that signage under our own definition of signs are always accessory to permitted principal use. So in this case, the educational use would be the principal use, and signage would be accessory to that. And all the signs that we're reviewing tonight are visible from routes 9 and 9G, which come under our code. In terms of trying to apply each of the criteria, I think I'd be looking for direction as to which, or the 9 factors, which, Mr. Rosenhausen, you think would be the ones that, would it be 7, 8, and 9, I'm taking it? Should I say these out loud for the record, by the way? The 9 factors? Should I read these into the record?
Sure, why don't you do that?
The 9 factors to consider whether or not an encroaching governmental unit, encroaching meaning the school district, should be subject to the strict application of the zoning law. 1, the nature and scope of the instrumentality seeking immunity. 2, the encroaching government's legislative grant of authority. 3, the kind of function or land use involved. 4, the effect local land use regulation would have on the enterprise concerned. 5, alternate locations for this facility in less restrictive zoning areas. 6, the impact upon legitimate local interests. 7, alternative methods of providing the proposed improvement. 8, the extent of public interest to be served by the improvements. And 9, intergovernmental participation in the project development process and an opportunity to be heard.
And could I just add to that,
Please.
in that pivotal Court of Appeals case of County of Monroe against City of Rochester, the court encouraged the 2 governmental entities to cooperate with one another as much as possible. So in other words, just what has happened here is what the court was looking for. By going through the balancing test, the school district has attempted to comply with the local rules, and perhaps the board will be inclined to overlook the pediment issue. I have to add, though, that because we don't have a complete or proper public notice of this hearing, the hearing can start, but it'll have to be continued until the next meeting. And so no action can be taken tonight. But I would recommend that you go through this analysis, perhaps do a straw poll, so we could prepare a resolution for you for the next meeting. That would lay out a little more clearly what has been decided.
Well, let me go back to the cheat sheet then, and then I'll start calling on the board. We'll just take the first sign. The way I have it in order is North Park Elementary. There's a freestanding sign that's what I call internal, meaning it's not right on 9G. That's 32 square feet as proposed, 30 is allowed, and if you add the decorative triangular area, it makes a total of 40. So all we would need to do is increase from 30 to 40 square feet for that one. On the freestanding directional sign, we were not given a plan view. There's no survey we were given to show where that sign is. So we need to make certain 2 things. One, the way the code reads now, I believe that's in the 100-foot stream corridor, and there's supposed to be no disturbance. If we determine, based on these criteria, that there's a compelling interest for them to do so, though they wouldn't have to go to the ZBA for a variance for any of these things, not dimensional nor for incursion into the stream corridor. We just need to know if the directional sign is on school property or not. Because again, you submitted the way it looks, but you didn't submit a survey that shows where the directional sign is. This is the one that's by the entrance with an arrow pointing in. You also, if it's on DOT property, you might need a use and occupancy permit, which we can't grant, they can. They usually look for us to give an approval first before they'll give that. So we would also, the code reads that directional signs are only allowed to be 1 foot by 1 foot, so 2 square feet. This would be a 12 square foot directional sign, so we would need to increase from 2 square feet to 12 square feet. If that sounds especially large, I just want to point out that the directional signs covered in our code are really meant to be ones this big that you would be driving around the inside of a mall or something to say JCPenney's that way, or TD Bank North has the directional signs that tell you where the drive-through is, et cetera. We have the same directional signs at CVS. So what the code contemplates is just sort of internal ones to get you around. This would be directional to say, hey, the school's that direction. So it's up to us to, in our straw poll, to consider whether that's something we want to grant. Again, in my opinion, 12 square feet may sound large compared to 2, but it's just 3 by 4. It's not that big, and it's an easy way for people to identify where the sign is located if they're traveling on the highway. Then at Ralph R. Smith, we have a freestanding, I called it for our purposes the freestanding transportation sign, but it's a freestanding sign that says Ralph R. Smith. It just happens to also point out that the transportation department, or where the buses are kept, is also located down that way. Again, we would need to see a plan view or make certain that this is on your property. You have a sign there now. This is an increase dimensionally, so we want to make sure that it doesn't occlude traffic or create viewing obstacles. And the action that would be needed from us would be to increase from 30 square feet to 40 square feet. Then there's a freestanding directional sign. Again, there should be a plan view to show. It looks as though when I was on parcel access that Ralph R. Smith parcel goes all the way to 9. There's no DOT right of way. Wow, I mean 9G, okay. So then that's taken care of. And again, this would be we need to increase from 2 square feet to 12 square feet. Hyde Park Elementary sign is not part of this application now, so that's withdrawn. And then the Hyde Park Central School District Administrative Building sign at 11 Boyce Road. This is an increase of only from 30 square feet to 33 square feet. So let me start to the left. Mr. Signa, any comments?
My only comment is that the purpose of the signs is to identify the building for the purpose of safety and expediency in terms of travel. And I think 2 things happen. If the signs are all consistent, people know they're coming to a school sign. The ones that have the arrow, I think, have to clearly show the arrow. I think on the renderings I saw earlier, the arrows weren't always the dominant factor, and you kind of had to know that that's what it was for. So my only concern would be, and I would really defer to my colleagues, is it a visible arrow that points to a person, that's where the school or the building is, so there is no confusion? Because the purpose of these signs being on the main thoroughfares is safety and in travel.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, any comments?
Yeah, I don't always agree with Ed, but I do here. I think that, we want to make sure that they accomplish the mission that they're supposed to accomplish. It's North Park Elementary is probably a little jump for me, so I'm willing to be informed a little more than I am on it. And to be honest with you, the other 2, I've got no problem at all with.
It's sort of hard to see in the renderings we got because they came digitally, how the arrows, how prominent they are. Do you have some to show us tonight? Do you want to come up? And Nancy, can you speak into the microphone real quickly so that our camera operators, our directors are up here tonight.
I just have the photo that was given to Ms. Moss that kind of places it in the area where it is on each of those, if you just kind of, if it would help you to,
The North Park Elementary, I think, is the one that Mr. Murphy's discussing. Can you just show the arrow for the board?
absolutely.
I do want to point out that in the case of North Park, the entry is only to the school. It's not a roadway to anything else, and there's...
Okay, now that's gonna be the freestanding.
That's good. I see.
You good with that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, you can-
Okay, that appears to be answered. The arrow is sufficient. Thank you. Mr. Groninger, any comments? Thank you. Now I've got comments.
The one comment I have is it's pretty hard to really take a view on this until I know whether it is safe and we have a good, clear view of 9G. And it doesn't make any difference whether it's a school bus where the driver has eyes at about 8 feet above the ground, or whether it's somebody in a little compact, one of those little smart cars where your eyes are 3 feet off the ground. That is a 45-mile-an-hour stretch of 9G. My big concern is that there's obstruction, that they have plenty of sight distance, and I just can't even give a view on it. Other than that, I think the signs are very nice. I like the consistency in them.
Thank you. Ms. Dexter?
So to our attorney's guidance, the first question is, do we think that this should be considered, that just the question of signage? I do think that this board should be reviewing signage regardless of who the entity is. So I think it's proper that we are having this dialogue and working with the school district. So that was my first point. For the specific signs, I guess I'm a little confused because we had a presentation a few months ago that showed us a set of signs, and the signage that I saw last week looked different, and it was not the same, didn't look the same to me. It looked like they had changed. They're the exact same signs that I saw months ago. Okay. That was...
The initial signs we saw were drawings, and now these are not actual, but you've superimposed. You've done a CAD design or some sort of design and then superimposed it in an actual photograph so that it looks more realistic than the drawings that we saw. That's really what's changed.
Okay,
Now
well-
you can see the stone rather than it just being drawn stone. by
Yeah,
hand.
it's just, they looked actually quite different to me. So that was one of my first questions. The question about the directional signs, I do the strip on 9G a lot, and currently the North Park Elementary School directional sign is really clear. It's, all it says is North Park Elementary School. There's no mistaking it. I like the overall design. I just wonder if, if you're looking for places, if that smaller arrow, smaller wording might not be caught. And then I think at Ralph R. Smith, same kind of thing. Again, to me, directional should just be an arrow and this way. And these just seem to be, I don't know, I can see us down the road having other applicants requesting that we deviate from our sign code. And maybe the answer is for down the road, we need to add something to internal directional versus, major traffic area directional.
Entrance, exit, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's the difference. So I'm willing to, give them that on that. In general, I thought they looked nice, but I do agree with Mr. Groninger that the Ralph R. Smith one, we do need to understand where it's sitting and if it's going to block anybody pulling out.
Two things. One, just to answer a point you made, if another entity besides a governmental entity wanted to come to us and said we need an increase for a directional sign, they would have to go to the ZBA. We would have no ability in which to vary the code. This actually, I think, kind of works out elegantly. By reviewing this, if the school board, or once it's accepted that the signs are, they should be at least weighed against our code, we have the ability under the Monroe not doctrine, sorry, that's another part of history. Under the Monroe hearing guidelines, I'll call it, we have the ability to have the applicant skip the ZBA because we're going to find that there's a compelling interest on their part for us to exceed the code, or where code doesn't match the code, where they can not necessarily have to match it. But this is only for governmental entities, for nobody else. So it would be for anyone who's a taxing authority, like a school district, a fire district, a library district, I suppose, something like that. But a regular applicant, a commercial applicant, or a residential could not make the same request. And then two, I agree, that's why I said there are a couple where we just need to have a location on a survey. I think we've discussed this with the school. You should have surveys, I believe, everywhere. If not, you can do a top-down on Google. Just let us see where it is so we can make certain that there's no field of vision occluded. I thought you would, because you always have these things for us. Okay. Any further comments, Ann?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you. Those were very good. Mr. Oliver?
I'd like to thank the school district for trying to come into compliance as much as possible and make this, as easy as possible. Secondly, the position at the entrance at the school, I think is going to be very important. Like Mr. Groninger said, you don't want to be blocking the sight lines. That's important. And aesthetically, I think the signs look great, and I think they're going to be a great addition to, help people find the schools in Hyde Park. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marcigliano?
Yeah, the signs look good. Ted Morse has determined that they're only minor dimensional deviations from the zoning law. I don't think we need to struggle with Monroe balancing tests or determinations as to whether we have the ability to force conforming with the zoning law. I think we could take it on a sign-by-sign basis, have the public comment, and make our decisions based on that without even getting into any kind of issues as to whether we need to determine what authority we have to force our will on the school board, which has attempted to, in good faith, to conform to the zoning law.
Well, just a point, it wouldn't be forcing our will, our collective will. It's just the code. It's kind of like the last application. I had someone comment to me that they didn't want a Dollar General coming in. And did I? And I said, it doesn't matter what we want as individuals. All we do is administer the code. So it's just, is it code compliant or not? In this case, I'll weigh in now. Well, you've already heard me weigh in, but I personally believe that we could take action once we have a properly publicly noticed meeting to grant the applicant's requests for all the signs. In my opinion, I do think that, as has been brought up several times, that we need to make certain for safety purposes that it's compliant, but it's also in our own code. It discusses how far the setbacks have to be if it's two roads. In each case, these are only one road intersecting. There's not two roads there coming together. And they comport with all that. Ms. Moss and I went over it. As I said, if you actually take out what I'll call a decorative area, where there's no information, no sign, no nothing in the triangle above the actual, what I'll call the more proper sign face, they're all really close with the exception of the directionals. And that's just because the directional, as Ann pointed out, is really meant for internal rather than external. And that's a good point. We might want to, at some point, revisit the sign code to change it one more time. This is our section that's been changed more than any other. So for me, I'll be happy to take a straw poll, but I kind of got the sense that from everybody that they thought the signs were okay so long as we make certain they're in safe locations. But we also haven't allowed any member of the public to come and speak. So would anyone like to speak about this application? Mr. Sweet, come on up.
Move the mic a little closer, please.
I get this all the time from the peanut gallery.
Consider us the M&Ms tonight, yes.
I guess my comments are more to the public than to you knowledgeable folks. But the sign code or sign regulations is really the community values of Hyde Park. And that was enacted by the town board. The town board represents the community. And it would seem to be rather bizarre to say that, well, we have these values, and we want to make certain that Stop and Shop and TEG and the Methodist Church all conform, but the school doesn't have to. I think the question of jurisdiction is just a matter of common sense. And when I heard you all talking about while you're dealing with dimensional considerations, I felt right at home on the ZBA. We do that all the time. And it's almost always a matter of working out what the applicant wants, what the neighbors want, what the community wants. And quite often, by the time we're through, and I see the same thing with you folks, the applicant wants the same thing that the town wants, but didn't know it when he started. So I think this can all be worked out. I'd hate to see us set a precedent saying that we don't have any authority over this, because it's conceivable that sometime down the road that some headstrong individual from some particular part of the bureaucracy decides that he wants to do something outrageous, and it's all been established by precedent that he can do that. So we have to be very careful to avoid that. So, oh, by the way, we like to read the whereases.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who'd like to speak about this application? Then first, I want to thank the school board for agreeing to submit to the planning board. You've heard both from a member of the public now and from members up here why we think it's important to review this in light of the code. And I've reiterated this before publicly, but I'll say it again. When you're sitting up here, it's very hard when someone like the Culinary Institute, which is also a educational use and not-for-profit, says, well, they've got this, why can't we get it? And it's easier if we say, they applied to us and we found certain reasons why they got it, rather than just, oh, they're exempt, because the CIA is not. And I'd also add, in light of what Mr. Sweet said about jurisdiction equaling common sense, yes, you'd think it does, but in this case, the state, which has devolved certain powers to the towns, and the town is in itself, the town board has granted us the power to represent the town board in terms of planning and subdivision laws. The state has reserved certain powers to the school districts themselves. And by that I mean, we will never be reviewing buildings meant for educational uses. That's not covered by us, it's covered by different agencies, and that is the Department of Education itself. They review this very completely. So that would just be adding another layer of governmental review that's not necessary. In this case, we're in kind of a gray area because of the Monroe, the 1988 Monroe decision. And that's why the guidance they gave is really to do a balancing test as to whether or not the interests of the town, which would include trying to create a certain uniformity of signage to, under our comprehensive plan, create a sense of place so that signs don't all look alike, but they all share certain characteristics. It seems to me we'd want to have our schools also be part of that movement, be part of creating that sense of place. And part of our place is in Hyde Park is both to identify our historical character, also our scenic character. We have a lot of, natural beauty in the area, things that make Hyde Park Hyde Park. I personally believe in another hat from another board that I'm on through Visual Environment. I know that the school district worked with a variety of groups to seek public input from these different groups, the Historical Society, to come up with a motif that they thought would show pride in our community, and also, again, to, instead of having, say, Netherwood have a sign that looked like it could be in any Othersville school district, now there's a certain uniformity that when you drive around, you'll say, this is all part of HPCSD, and I personally applaud that. So I want to thank you again for that. Do you think that we can continue the public hearing now? We heard sufficient information to start shaping up a resolution for the future?
Yeah, I've heard plenty, so I don't see a need for a straw poll. I think just continue the hearing until next meeting.
So again, because we made an administrative error, we weren't certain. Ms. Moss classified two of the signs as directional because she wasn't certain how to classify them. And when we did the hearing, we sort of did it in a rush because Victoria, our attorney, had asked, after a meeting with your attorney and Supervisor Rohr, I think you were there too, Superintendent Reichik, to go ahead and do it, so I just went ahead and set it, and we did it so fast, we weren't sure how the signs were classified. So, as I said, it's an error on our part, but we will also renotice to some of the neighbors where we misdescribed, not all of them, and we'll remove, before the next meeting, we'll remove the sign for Hyde Park Elementary just from the application entirely. So it'll be a couple of less signs, and we'll reopen the public hearing at that point. If there's any member of the public that wants to speak, they'll still be able to at that time. So I'm making a motion to continue this to the September 17th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anything informally you guys would like to add? I feel like I was waiting for the school board to come up and say something, but anything?
Do you want to clarify exactly what you're asking them to provide for the next meeting?
Nancy, do you understand, like, to show just the location of it's really for the directional, it's for the signs that are actually on Route 9G that look like they might not be on your property. I couldn't tell in parcel access, and they tell you straight out, those lines aren't accurate, and where you're showing the sign for the directional for Ralph R. Smith, it's right on the dot. And I'm assuming, like I said, that it looked, if I just shifted the dots a little bit, it looked like that their property line goes right to 9G. There's no DOT right-of-way there. And the other point is to clarify the directional for North Park Elementary. That, I don't know exactly where it is. It looks like to me that it's in a stream corridor. Again, we can, no need for a ZBA variance. We can put that into the resolution if that's what we determine. Could you get that to us, like, would it be possible to get that to us in about a week, within the week? That we will have time before, to review it before we open up the next public hearing for the resolutions.
Was
Yes.
there also some dimensional information you need that was missing?
That was for Hyde Park Elementary
Oh, so
sign,
that's all.
and that's been removed.
Okay.
That might explain why it was submitted, but we didn't get the dimensions, because you didn't want us to review it. See, sorry, it was a lack of communication. So, any other questions or comments from you guys?
No, this is a project that, no questions, just a comment. This is a project that's been alive since 2007. The money has been allocated. We have made every effort to mirror the historic nature of our town and from the...
Oh, oops, I'm sorry, wait. Superintendent Reichert, could you please come and speak into the microphone? I'm getting my... Thank you, and I know this is not in the public hearing, it's just a side comment.
Yeah, the Hyde Park Central School District has been engaged in this sign project since 2007, where the money was allocated to create the district signs. And over the years that this project has been alive, we have made every effort to communicate, as Michael, you had indicated earlier, to communicate with the public about what we wanted to see, and overwhelmingly unified signage was first and foremost. If you look at the signs throughout the town for the Hyde Park Central School District, they are, not a single one resembles the next one. So this will be an improvement to the town on multiple levels. It is an improvement for our school district because it's important that, you know, our constituents can recognize very easily. I also want to say about the directional signs, we are replacing existing directional signs. Those are school buildings that you cannot see from the road. So it is very different from a business that once you get into the business, you're redirecting. But if we don't have the directional signs, and I appreciate, you know, we want them to be safe, but if we don't have directional signs, no one would even know a school building is there. So they're not technically directional, I think, in the true sense of what a directional sign is. If we don't have a sign on the road for Ralph R. Smith and North Park, someone looking for the school would not know a school building exists because they're not really visible from the road. So
Particularly Ralph R. Smith.
Yeah.
It's set way back.
Way back.
And you've got other properties in the front of it that really occlude all the views of it. So, I know with Ralph R. Smith, with North Park, after Tad told me the internal sign was visible, I dutifully drove over there, and if you go slow, You can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to kind of go really slow,
You'd
in my
probably
opinion.
almost break a different kind of traffic violation
Yes.
and going under the speed limit. You would have to go that slow.
And you also have to be looking that direction to see it. But you
Yeah.
can see the buildings at least, but it's not readily identifiable. That's why I think, again, while these are directional signs, they're identifying directional signs, and they're important for you. I recognize that. I think all of us do.
Our intent is to work with the town and collaborate with the town, and we could debate about governmental agency jurisdictions, and we don't really want to go there, but we do want something that the town can be proud of and is representative of the interests of the town in not only beautifying the town, but in creating a unified approach to how we advertise our schools. So, thank you for your conversation.
Thank you.
We look forward to the next hearing.
Mr. Groninger?
Yeah, I'm just going to throw out one additional comment. Probably the school that attracts the most, I'll call visitors, those from other schools, would be your high school. And a great deal of traffic comes up North Cross or in South Cross Road. You may even want to consider a sign down on Route 9 at the bottom end of South Cross Road. People come in from football games from Rhinebeck, Red Hook, across the river particularly, and they may never have even seen, well, how the heck do I even get to Roosevelt High School? We do have GPSs. Technology has changed a lot of these needs for directional signs. But consider as you do your sign for the Roosevelt High School that really you have traffic approaching that from two sides. 9 and 9G are your primary mediums. But with the consideration, not where North Park is, but a short distance up, right at the traffic light, you have 55 mile an hour approaching directional signs. And that would be the same case at South Cross Road and Route 9, if that intersection. I've seen many a car up and down that, particularly baseball and particularly football games. Consider also Route 9.
Thank you.
Mr. Rodenhausen may correct me because I think I'm right, but if you wanted to propose a sign down there, you would have no right to do so, and off-premises signage is banned under our code. But I believe that under a Monroe test, we could consider you locating it there. You again would have to get, once we approve it, you'd have to get a use and occupancy permit from DOT, but that's actually a good consideration. I hadn't thought about that because I don't take that old windy road.
You don't want it.
Ann lives there, she knows. I think it's kind of unsafe myself. I just go down the other way and go non-G, so myself. But he's right, for out-of-towners who might consider it, it might be easier even with GPS units to see a little small sign, FDR Hyde down that way. So I don't know if your sign budget allows for that, but it's something for you to consider. And it would allow us to take care of that rather than you having to go through trying
Whatever.
to get use variance from the ZBA.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Have a nice night. Thank you. Okay, the next on the agenda is Stewart Shop. This is the one on Route 9G. The applicants are seeking a very minor elevation change of adding 4 white columns. They've already painted the existing brick gray. Does anyone have anything to, let me start to my left. Mr. Signa, any comments?
No, just I know there was concern regarding the color gray and that it had been there, that was the red brick showing through, so it wasn't representative color, but the color is true gray. And I guess the fact that it's here really is redundant.
We could consider approving it because what we do now, let me go back through this. In the past, boards did not require materials to be submitted. It's like paint chips, material to show if it was stone, whatever. We do that now so that if there's a big change, like going from white to hot pink, we could say, no, you violated site plan. But in their case, they did not do that, so they could change the paint color, that's all. But we'll be approving whatever paint color it is. This seems pretty minor to me. Mr. Murphy, any comments?
I think it's starting to look a lot better than it did before, and I heartily encourage the change.
Mr. Groninger.
I'm going to keep mine short. Ditto.
Ms. Dexter, I heard you didn't like the color. Pink?
None before.
Well, I think I caught it before it had its second coat.
Second coat.
I was like, ooh, I don't like this.
I went by after I heard that, and at night, it kind of glows more now because of the lighting, because it
Yeah.
reflects more.
Okay.
But during the day, it definitely looks gray. And it does kind of seem to pop, but maybe that's because I was not looking at it anymore, so. Mr. Oliver?
I think it looks a lot better, and I didn't get a chance to see it without the second coat on, but it looks good now.
Mr. Mercigliano?
Looks good to me, no comment.
So all we're really doing tonight is referring this to county planning? Someone has that resolution?
Yep. resolution typing action and referring the applicant to Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, Stewart Shops, Route 9G. Resolution number 14-29, whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby, 1, classifies the project as type 2, as a type 2 action under SECRA, and 2, directs its secretary to refer the site plan to the site plan set to Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development pursuant to section 239M of the general municipal law.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Knapp, can you request expedited review from DC Planning? And I will make a phone call explaining that this is a really minor elevation change. That's all, but it requires a building permit per Mr. Westermeyer. That's why they're going through for this. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, River Ridge. Mr. Stein, you were patient and waited long enough. We got through the portion of the school signage quickly enough. Would you like a mic? Do you have boards? Yes, you do. And would you like a walk-around microphone? It would be better than being the silent avenging angel if you don't, where no one can hear you otherwise.
Show's not on mute.
You'll need to hold this up. It doesn't work as a clip-on anymore. Thank you.
Clip broke.
Good evening. Thank you for the time this evening. As the chairman
Is that
said-
working?
Is this working?
Can you hear in the audience? Can you hear him in the audience like you hear? Okay, yes.
So, well, again, thank you for allowing me to appear this evening. My name is Jonathan Stein. I'm one of the principals of River Ridge Associates LLC, the owners of the River Ridge condominium complex on just north of here on Route 9. As many of you know, we acquired the note on the property and then ultimately the deed on the property about a year and a half ago, and we've been working to build our clubhouse and make some improvements to the site over the past year and a half or so. During that time, we've engaged a sales team, and we've been actively marketing the property for the sale of individual homes within River Ridge. During that time, we've gotten some market feedback. There's been a lot of market reluctance to purchase homes within River Ridge because of the history of the site and the fact that the
Jonathan, I
clubhouse cannot
apologize.
be-
Our director is coming up too, I'm sure. No. Like,
Yeah, but just get real close.
Okay.
Hello?
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. How's that?
Hello, hello,
There you
hello.
go, that's good.
we can hear you. I can hear you through the speakers now.
Okay. So we've been trying to market the site over the past year and a half, and we've gotten feedback from a lot of the area brokers that said, because of the history with the site, because of some of the delays within the clubhouse, and because the site is just overall, it was designed many years ago and needs to be refreshed. And so what we've done is gone back and taken a look at, our designs for the units and the exterior of the units in particular. So what we've done is create some new exterior designs. We're really here to present to you the new facades for the buildings. The unit sizes, the unit dimensions are all very, very similar to what they were. The interior flows within the unit are a little bit different, but they don't significantly change the footprints of the units, the widths of the units, the locations of the units, the heights of the units. It doesn't change anything other really than the facades of the buildings. So over the past several weeks, we've met with Chairman Dupree and some other representatives of the board and presented our plans. Just to refresh everybody's memory of the site, we entered the site off of Route 9, where there's 162 units that were approved. There's approximately 34 that were sold to prior homeowners. There's another 10 or so units that are built and not yet sold off that we've been having difficulty selling, which is one of the reasons that we went back and looked at the facades to freshen them up, make them more contemporary, not as a design, but as what the marketplace is demanding within the interior of the units. So we've upgraded and refreshed the look of the development. Currently, we've built out the site. the same plan. Let me orient you again. Coming off of,
Yeah, there you go.
that helps. So coming off of 9, again, into the site, this is the sales cluster over here. Sales cluster is over here. These are the units that are built already, the ones in lighter gray, the ones in darker gray. By the way, this is built as well. The ones in darker gray are the ones that will receive the new facades. This is the new clubhouse that was approved last year, the new clubhouse location that we came to the planning board for approval on, that is currently being built. So nothing is changing from any of these layouts. Nothing is changing at all in the site plan, other than we're denoting that the lighter gray is where the units are already built, here, 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 and the darker gray buildings will all have the new unit facades. As far as the unit facades, we've made them, again, a little more refreshing, a little more, let's call them Hudson River country-esque, a little more country barn style. We've provided some additional stonework on the front of the units. We've provided some standing seam metal roofs, just some more interesting architectural features, just to make them pop a little bit more. We've provided some barn-style garage doors to make them, just a little more attractive, make them a little bit different, kind of set the tone that there's a new developer that's come in, and we're putting a lot of money into the site, we're putting a lot of money into the homes and kind of repositioning it. Again, because the broker community has looked at this as a community that they don't want to take buyers to right now, because buyers aren't hot demand, and they'd rather take a buyer to a developer that they know is going to actually produce on their their sale. They're actually going to develop the units, and we want to make a statement as we're coming in and building out our new units. So those are the fronts of facades. We talked about in some of our prior meetings what the rears of the facades will be. And what we've done here is provide, by the way, just so everybody recognizes, this is not a real building. This is just a...
Illustrative purposes.
Right, for illustrative purposes, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 unit illustration only. All the buildings out there as currently exist will be 6 or 8 unit buildings. That's what we intend on doing, but we want to show the mixture of facades. The labeling down here, by the way, importantly for sales perspective, is right now all of the master bedrooms are essentially located at the rear of the unit. But because our site plan, especially as we get down closer to the river, allows for units that are going to have direct and indirect river views, what we wanted to do is allow buyers to have the opportunity to have their master bedrooms face the river. So if a master bedroom faces the river from the front of the house, we have a plan that says master, master up, A, which is actually the master going to face the front of the unit towards the river, and master, I think on this one it's labeled Beekman, is going to have the master facing the rear of the unit. So if you have a rear facing unit, the master will face the river. So again, just doing some facade, some stylistic changes to make the units more attractive in the marketplace, to refreshen it. And that's the term I'd kind of like to leave you with, that we're refreshing it. Going to be different, we think a little more consistent with what today's market is going to be looking at. And the rear of the homes will be, really have 3 different types of conditions on them, all of which, by the way, will have the siding come closer to the, to the ground, to the water table, as opposed to some of the conditions right now where the siding kind of stops 6 or 10 feet up in the air. So we're going to, again, refreshen the back of these, make them more attractive, continue with the full-sided views on it. What we've shown here, again, is just illustrative. We'll have 3 different basement conditions, and the basement conditions will be either, it's actually 4 different basement conditions. Either in some areas, because there's a lot of blasting on the site, a lot of excavating because of stone, there may be some conditions that we don't have basements.
At all.
Then we can have a condition that is shown here that'll be fully underground basement. Then we could potentially have areas where there will be a emergency egress from the basement, but it won't be a walkout condition. So we'll have some windows, and then there will be a condition that we have full walkout basements. And again, that depends upon blasting and topography, because obviously we're building into the slope of the existing topography now. So there'll be conditions that we allow walkouts and other conditions that there won't be any walkout.
And just to note for the record that this is already allowed under the current approval and the original approval. There were options for walkout basements, options for no basements. It was based really on topography.
Correct, correct. Yeah, and this is all, thank you for pointing that out. This is all consistent with what is currently allowed, what the practice has been. Really what we're doing is just introducing the new facades as the board sits, in its architectural review capacity.
And I might point out that the width of the units cannot change because they're tied to the lot width.
Correct.
In townhomes. There may be a little bit of footprint change from unit to unit, but that's also already envisioned in the current one, where you have some that had optional basements that had walkouts or not. The lots themselves, he doesn't want to change, and neither would, because it's far too complicated. So everything will still be fitting in the same. In addition, the example you're showing has two end units that are the widest units. But if you look at the site plan, you don't have to show it, but down at the bottom, you'll see that some of those actually only have one outside unit, I'll call, that's wide, and then it's got 4 or 5 of the narrow ones. It's, again, that was based on topography initially and what they were able to do. So basically, what they're proposing is just addressing up an aesthetic upgrade of the exterior to make it more marketable. In addition, I'm just going to go ahead and point out, Mr. Stein didn't, rather he's not showing it per se, but I'd commented after Ed and I had gone out there that the rears on some of them, you can see almost 10 feet of just plain cement because the siding didn't go down. And if you'll look, if on the back he shows he's got some stone fascia on the back and he's trying to bring the siding down because to limit that, because I said that might be limiting your sales too. I wouldn't want to walk around and have a beautiful front and then go around and have an ugly back because a lot of people spend time in their backyard. So that's one of the reasons why you see the siding going all the way down, is to limit that kind of blank look that was there beforehand.
Right.
So it's relatively minor, but since it's on Route 9, it has to go to DC Planning. We have a resolution prepared. Any comments, Mr. Sotero? No. Mr. Rodenhausen? No. Any comments from the board?
No.
I just, nope. The only comment is I appreciate any effort you're making to sell it. One thing, as you were mentioning it, to help, you're doing this to improve the saleability of the units. When we approved the pool and the clubhouse, I remember that was the argument for doing that, was it would improve the saleability. So my question is, how far along are you on the pool and the clubhouse? And would that kind of help out with what you're trying to do here?
Two questions.
Yes.
Deserves two answers.
Yeah.
So factually, we are, I think we just laid steel for the first floor of the clubhouse. So that is moving along well, like every other process. It's slower than anybody would have hoped, but we are moving, as fast as we can to, get the clubhouse in. There's regular site activity. To get to your other question about, improving sales, yeah, that was the approach. Yeah. So we went through, as everyone here knows, an extensive process reviewing and upgrading the recreation site plan.
Yep.
We ultimately got that approved, if memory serves correct, in September of 13. Mm-hmm. We commenced work in October of 13. We had a very bad winter.
Polar vortex.
Yeah, the polar vortex. So by mid-December, we had to stop work on our excavation. We couldn't keep the ground warm enough to actually excavate or pour concrete out there. Our building permit expired in January.
Right.
We were asked to upgrade the facility to new codes. That took us through perhaps May or June when we got the new building permit issued, and we've been building since.
So your expected completion is when?
We'd like to be fully done some point in the winter. Hopefully, January, February-ish. Obviously we have, inspections. We have, potentially another polar vortex. Hopefully we'll be fully enclosed in the next
I hope not.
month and a half. They're expecting a worse winter this winter than we had last winter. So I don't know is the answer, but certainly we're moving as quickly as we can. Hopefully, if we can meet our expectations, it'll be like February, the building is done, other than, obviously, nobody's going to be swimming in the middle
Right.
of February. But Hopefully, the building will be done and furnished.
Skating.
Yeah.
Skating, yeah.
Thank you.
It's a good question, Mr. Signa, thank you. Anyone else?
Just one comment about the siding in the back. I mean, I often get a lot of calls to go and do like stone veneer on townhouses, and one of the major issues might be affecting the sellability is that every time a homeowner wants to do it, they have to go for an AR, an architectural review, and the boards won't agree on it, so I think that's a really smart move to do that, so.
Well, we have, just so we're all on the same page, I'm showing all of the additional
On the front.
stone on the front. Right, so I don't know if you recall where the stone is on the existing units right now.
It's only up to window height level on,
Yeah.
on one small.
Right, it's actually tucked in here
Mhm.
onto, probably about this height, and just the one area at all. So what we've done is substantially upgrade the front facades and put a lot of money into the front facades. I'll give you, for instance, these garage doors. Typically, a builder would pay, $700 or so, $800 for a garage door. These garage doors will be somewhere about, $1,200, $1,400. Obviously, the stone we're probably putting on to these units, probably, I'd say, at least 100% more stone than they currently have. So, we have no standing seam metal. We're doing all these things with the, architectural treatments on the front to make them much more interesting. The rear of the units, we don't have any planned stone right now on the rear of the units, but we are going to, increase the siding on it, so we don't have that same condition on the rear that currently exists. As far as the homeowner documentation, this plan's already been filed with the AG's office. It's already been approved. I think we're on our 9th amendment we just had approved. So we already have 34 existing homeowners that, already have their own style. I don't want to, make this so different that we have two different communities. It's still got to be one community. It's still got to be, everybody's got to vote and have controls over, the facades. And, we can't make too many changes. Certainly after we close title, we don't want individual homeowners making changes. And then you just have a mishmash. So right now, as I showed you earlier, the theory is, because we have pretty much of a natural break between what's built and what we're going to be building, is essentially coming down this turn. We have this building that's built. So coming down from here, this whole section will have the new facades, and this section will have the old facades. This is the U building, by the way. We've shown it as new facades. Ultimately, we're going to leave this building off for quite some time. Might end up building it similar to this, just because we want to see, make sure the existing homeowners are comfortable with the way that this is working and fits in. We're certainly not looking to alienate anybody. We're certainly looking to, this will improve the value of all the homes together, not just the new homes, because really there's no market for the old homes right now, the existing homes. So we're trying to do everything that we can, including all the improvements with the rec center and, topping the roads. And I don't know if you've been out to the site, but the landscaping on the site really looks pretty now. So we've really put a lot of money into just upgrading the entirety of the facility to support. So again, it'll be like two sections. So we don't want to interplay too many design changes within each of the individual elements. So I'm not going to allow the homeowners to make exterior facade changes.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It was a good idea to bring that siding down to the rear and the back, so you don't have that exposed concrete.
Thank you.
Jonathan, the only thing I think you didn't mention, and it's not crucial for what we're considering, but do you want to explain which building you're going to, because I believe when we discussed it with, when Ed was at the meeting, you were going to build a prototype building with the new facade?
Yes. This is so as you pull into the site again, this is where the existing model complex is. This is as you pull down the road here. These buildings are all built. This road is not yet in. But if you make the right, this road is in down to essentially where the clubhouse is.
Right.
At least it's roughed in at this point. So, typically what you try and do as a developer is keep your models near the clubhouse, near the recreational amenities, because, it gets inclement outside, especially in the winter or nasty weather. You don't want to be dragging people through your site. You'd like to be able to have them park and walk them through. So what we're going to do is, this building T is the first building we'll be building. We're going to put the model units within T. There are 8 units, 8 units within T. So we'll probably make 2 or 3 of them into models, probably take the end unit and the unit next to it, make them into models, sell off the balance of the building, and keep everyone near the, our models near the new recreational facilities. And also, they have, obviously, pretty views of the rest of the site, so the topography drops off significantly off of here.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Then I think we're ready to read the resolution. Thank you. Who has this one?
This is item supply one.
Just a motion.
Just a.
Oh, making a motion, you're right, making a motion to refer this to Dutchess County Planning.
So moved. And set a public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Should we set a public?
All in
hearing?
favor? I'll do that by separate motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Making a motion to set the public hearing for September 17th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There. And
Thank you all.
I will call and beg and plead with Heather to do an expedited review as well. I know it's 2 of them, but they're both just minor facade change, well, facade changes, one not so minor, but I'll ask and see if we can get this for expedited review. Thank you. And last item on the agenda is Lands of Cire. Thank you, Jonathan, or Mr. Stein. The last item is Lands of Cire. This is the unbuilt but approved medical plaza where construction was started on 9, roughly across from the Eveready. The applicant has indicated that he's having a hard time securing, he had a tenant, but he had to come back for a couple of changes, amendments to the site plan. He lost one tenant, he hasn't been able to find another one. He doesn't want to start until he has 1 anchor tenant, so he's requested a site plan extension, which requires setting a public hearing. So making a motion to set the public hearing for September 17th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any other business? Making a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for all the informed comments on the school signage. And thank you, Media Committee, very much. Thank you.